This is my first Fremo module set. It's approximately 2 feet wide by just over 12 feet long. I built it because I had to get an apartment in Worcester, Ohio for work, and because I was in an apartment, I knew I eventually wanted the layout to be in my basement here. I used the Fremo standards. And in Worcester, there's a building complex called Gerstenslager. I refer to it as Gerties. And I tried to scratch build the buildings in the area as I saw them. So first, on the far side of the main, we have Gerties 1, which ships auto body stampings. And then just across the track from it is International Paper. I believe they import craft paper in rolls and ship out cardboard. Probably both shipping in and out on boxcars. Then we have the scrap dump for Gerties. This was originally prototypically served by trucks, but I decided to make it a rail industry because I need more traffic. And then we have the Gertie 2 building, which prototypically serves high cubes, but I used coil cars because someone suggested that it was a better traffic builder, giving more variety of cars. And then finally, on the Gertie side, we have the Gertie building number 3, which also serves high cubes. And it has like rubber flaps over the doorway, and I tried to replicate that using shredded garbage bags, and it sort of has the right look. Across the track from the Gertie buildings is the Frito-Lay plant. The Frito-Lay plant has boxcars at the F1 spot, tank cars of vegetable oil at the F2 spot, and grain, I think corn, at the F3 spot at the far end there. And just to provide a little more variety, I have a team track here in the middle module. I just tried to start making car cards and waybills for all my cars. The waybills aren't filled out, but I got the format ready on my computer so I could just print them out. Instead of boxes for the car cards, I wanted to try something a little bit easier, and I used those little pockets. As you can see there, they're labeled. The top row is for inbound cars. The middle row is for cars to be held, and the bottom row is for the outbound cars. Typically cars would go in, the car cards would go in the top level, and then the next section they would move down to the hold, or they would go right down to the outbound. I'm still working on a operating scheme, so I haven't quite worked out all the bugs. My second module set was Gilbert. I called it Gilbert because it kind of reminded me of a track plan that I saw of Gilbert, West Virginia. And it's 180 degrees, one track in, one track out, but it's got like 2 passing sidings, approximately 12 feet long each. And this was mostly for operating in a Fremo setting. It provides a nice, tight, relatively tight, it's a 4-foot radius turn back, and 2 passing sidings, where it can either be used at the end of a Fremo run for trains to stop, run around their trains, and return the other way. It can also be split into 2 to make 2 small yards, or some industries. This track in the foreground is an extension of the yard track for my Worcester module set. I realized I needed a little bit longer yard, so I temporarily and rather quickly tacked down some flex track, and it works pretty well. So far I don't really need the extra 2 feet or so on the second module there, but it's nice to have extra space just in case. Now, when I had these industries or these modules set up, I originally had a 2 3-foot long tail tracks so I could run around trains. They were here. This one went here, and this another one similar to this went at the other end. It was just one piece of flex track on a 1x, just made it real quick and easy. Of course it's wired. I've got some terminal strips so I could plug this in for good electrical contact. And this was proved to be not quite long enough to facilitate the longer trains and longer cars that was running through Worcester. So that's what really spurred me to build Gilbert. And then I originally had the tail track on the end of Gilbert here, and while it worked relatively well, I couldn't pull the whole train out to do my classifying from this end of the yard. So I thought about extending it, and this is how I extended it. Used just some extra foam that I had left over, and I made it from a 1-track to a 2-track real quickly. And then, since I was adding track, I figured why not add some industries, and they're really more for storage for cars for the Worcester module set. We have Garg Oil Company, the warehouse for Garg Oil, which the box cars will probably be used somewhere else on a different industry. Maybe international paper cars will get stored there, but it looks relatively prototypical. I had the models left over from an old layout, so I decided to reuse as many as I could. The back track is where I store my coil cars. This building here is Revco, and it was originally, I thought it could be a bagging house for Porta Cement, but it doesn't have the required conveyors, and it's not really close enough, so it's just more or less a warehouse of sorts. And then with the 2 main lines in the back, continuing through, we have a millwork and lumber company, because I had it and I wanted to use it for something. Then we have another turnout to a small scrap yard, which will receive the scrap from the Gertie scrap loadout. Then I had a station, so I stuck that in the corner, and I had another turnout, so I threw it on here, and it is just a car storage for team track or overflow extra cars. All the track work is code 70 microengineering turnouts, except when we get to the corner, and then that's code 100 24-inch radius sectional track I was going to use as a circle to help me speed match my locomotives, but that never quite worked out, so I used it here. And it's a pretty tight corner for the auto racks, or for the high cubes and auto racks that I run sometimes. A short section of code 83, another section of code 100, a number 4 turnout that I saved off an old layout, back to a code 83 track. The number 4 turnout serves a Swift building that my dad built quite a few years ago, and it was just a nice little building, so I threw it on there. And I had a few other reefer cars, so it provides a good spot for them. And then a short little piece of that 24-inch radius code 100 track going right back to the code 70 microengineering. So this is the tail track for this end of the Worcester module set, and it's a little tight, but it does work. I'll have to perfect it a little bit better, but it's a pretty decent start. Now for my operating, even though I use car cards and waybills, I developed this system, which is not prototypical by any means, but I think it gives me a little bit of good randomness to my operating sessions. What I did is I just took some playing cards, spray painted them white, and then wrote on them industry abbreviations and a number of cars to pull. So what I do is I shuffle the cards, or you don't have to, it doesn't matter. I'm still working on it, so we'll see how it works out. Then I draw one card. So Gertie 1 receives 0 cars today. Put the cards back. Gertie 2 receives 2 cards today. You could write these numbers down on a chart rather than leaving the cards out. Doesn't really matter. Gertie 3 receives 0 cars. The scrap loadout receives 0 cars. Oh, not many cars today. And this is what I'm testing out to see how random these card draws really are. And you see I didn't have enough cards in one deck, so I used 2 decks. It's a great way to recycle your old decks. International Paper will receive 2 cars. Team Track, because it's a switchback industry, I loaded it with a lot of 0 cards. So let's see if we pull a number other than 0. Nope, you get a turn 0 for the Team Track. Now on to the Frito-Lay Industries. We get 1 boxcar for the Frito-Lay building. I've changed these numbers around a few times already. Just use some whiteout to white out the numbers and then rewrite them on there. No big deal. Neatness isn't a big deal for me right now. I just want to get something to see if it works. Frito-Lay 2 gets 2 cars. Those are the tank cars. Frito-Lay 3 gets 2 cars. And I had a few blank cards left over, so I could add more cards if I want and if I need. Now this looks like a little sparse, so I'm going to redraw let's redraw Gertie 3, Gertie 2, the Gertie scrap. What have we got here? More zeros. We got a 1. Okay, so 1. It gives us a little more switching to do. Even though it's work, this is the kind of work we all love, right? So all the cards are drawn. And what I'll do is I'll pick up these cards from the rest of the industries on the layout. So I'll take the train out. I control all my turnouts just by flicking the finger. Less wiring, no switch motors to worry about. And it's nice and easy that way. See, turnout back there is good. International Paper will need 2 cars. So what we'll do is pull those two cars. Team track doesn't get anything. Sorry, I'm just looking at my cheat sheet here. I wrote up a script of what I was going to do. I wrote up a few, and this is the one I kind of stuck with. So first I have to pick up cars at the lumber, if any, and we don't need any. Is there a box car? What we'll do is we'll take these two cars for the team track. I do have the car cards sitting there because I didn't get around to making little pockets yet for them. So this is the Boston and Maine and the Norfolk Western. And we'll connect those to these. Oops. Looks like I forgot to check that turnout. Actually, Gertie 2 will receive 2 cars. So my mistake turned into something okay. Pull these 2 cars out rather quickly. But typically when I do this by myself and I'm not recording, I like to take my time and run at very realistic, maybe even slower than realistic speeds. Just because. Like I say, it's work that we all enjoy. Typically I'll stop the car about 5 ties before coupling them together. I'll couple them. While we're on this track, we need 2 cars for the F2 track. So we'll run these back. Stop just before making the connection. That way the guy on the ground can line up the couplers. And usually I'll try not to move the cars. Give them time to hook up the hoses. Hop on board the car for a ride back. We'll pull these cars out and couple them back onto our train. So let's see, I've got no cars for team track, nothing for 32. International paper cars I did pull. Those I pulled. And even though it's a cement plant, I also store covered hoppers there. Well, I happen to have 2 covered hoppers here that are suitable for the Frito-Lay plant, the F3 track. So I'll assume I have these already. And all I need now is another box car for the F1, the Frito 1. I need a scrap gun for GS, and I need I've got these 2 Quella cars here, and I don't need anything there. So I'll pull this train so it clears the main line here. That should be good. I picked up a couple of these cars, picked up these. I'll sort those out later, and because I don't have any throttle jacks on this side of the layout, I'll just plug in over here. I will uncouple, take the caboose around, or will I? No, I'll leave the caboose on the train. I'll take the locomotive light. There's no sidings on this side. I could add a crossover, but that means I would have to cut some flex track, and I want to save the flex track for another module I'm planning. So for the time being, I'll leave it.